Bobby Malone. It's good to have you home. So you tried your own route, and it didn't work out. Well, you're not alone. A job that made you crazy, in a town you won't miss, and the drunks you called friends were a means to an end. And this is the end. Hey, Bobby Malone, how you have grown. A couple months on the couch while you figure things out. Won't do your own. Hey, Bobby Malone. Couldn't make rent again. Are you in trouble deep? You're a stray dog with fleas, and your sister agrees. You've looked better, son. Hey, Bobby Malone, it's good to have you home. A couple months on the couch while you figure things out. Won't do you wrong. Hey, Bobby Malone. Hey, Bobby Malone.
That's beautiful. All right, I love that song. Everybody's been Bobby Malone at some point in their life, right? Tucson, hello. I don't know what the O/ is. I'm going to quickly look up O/. I just hate that there's all this bullshit you got to keep up with. O/. No. It's not Google. O/diff meaning. There you go. It's gaming. Short for of? No. O/. No. No. /O/ like this means cheering. Down means defeated. Okay. What is O/? No. All right, you're going to have to tell me. Heil? All right, Heil, right back at you. Heil who I won't say. Just Heil. What rhymes with Heil? The Heil file. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I guess, I guess I haven't done a stream for like 3 weeks. I haven't done a stream since that dickhead who calls himself Port Moody Kid, who just occasionally makes these stupid sounds on the in the chat. Said my nose is really red, and I know it's super red today because I've been in the sun all weekend, and now if I'm in the sun, fucking blinding red. And I know it just means something bad health-wise. It just means I'm like gonna die, my heart condition or some shit. That's really what bothers me about it. And that's why we booted poor Moody Kid for mentioning. Yeah. He sits there silently and he doesn't offer any sort of intelligent or humorous commentary, pushback, or disagreement or encouragement. Nothing witty, no bon mots, just like he's sitting there silent, for an hour, 2 hours, and then, fuck, dude, your nose is so red, you know. I mean, I get that from the guys at work, right? I want something more, just like you want something more from me. Yeah, you don't really want me to sit here and just talk about my red nose. So yeah, I mean that kind of put me off for 3 weeks, but actually I've been busy each weekend and even this weekend. But I said I'm gonna do a stream even though I can't get ready for it. I've been outside working all day yesterday, and cursing my landlady who kind of put me to work. She's paying me, but I mean I don't, you know, frankly I could work at work, and make real money, but I don't do it because frankly it's milking it. And I like to take the weekends off. I'm not a fucking money grubbing psychopath who needs to work 12 hours a day, and I don't need to do it either. I'm just pissed that I still feel compelled to work at all at my age, but I still have to grind. Uh, but then I get this project that I thought I could do quickly. Frankly, I only say yes because I don't want to say no. I have a hard time saying no. Uh, so she throws this at me. Okay, I'll help you. Um, she's paying me a pittance to do it. And then it turns into a fucking nightmare. Building a fence. I don't know how to build a fucking fence. But I'm pretty handy, actually. And then that fucking woman has got it into her mind that I'm handy, and that's bad. Frankly, I should just do shoddy work so that she'll say, okay, I'm never going to bother him again about that. Anyway, so that was today and yesterday, and sun is blazing out. Summer is blazing out in Washington State the way it does. July and August are nice and hot. I mean, it takes forever for summer to get going. June. If you grew up in Southern California, you know June gloom, which means it's overcast and kind of muggy, not really nice until noon or later in June. Then that cloud cover burns off and you have these hot afternoons. And if you live close enough to the coast, it's nice. But frankly, most of Southern California, like you live like 20 miles or deeper inland, in summer is a dry, dusty uh, hell, really. Um, but here, instead of June gloom, we just have, it's barely summer. It's often overcast all day. It still rains once in a while. And then July and August, it blooms. And then towards August, it just rages. It's actually hot. Uh, and then, like September 1st, like as soon as September rolls around, the door slams shut on your summer. It just slams shut and boom, it's like right back into, the other season. Really, you got 2 seasons. You got like a 2 month summer, and then the rest of the time it's this temperate, rainy season. It will get cold in this winter, but it rarely stows at the lower elevations. And it's just this gray, drizzly place that leads many to off themselves. It's a very Bobby Malone vibe. Anyway, I didn't want to talk about all that. Um, I wanted to talk about Nick Fuentes. Yes, Nick Fuentes. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the topical. Um, because I've decided that Tucker Carlson is, in fact, an idiot, just like he kind of appears often to be. And Candace is crazy, like she often appears to be. Um, and of course, Tucker and Candace have kind of unexpectedly, out of the blue, have decided they're going to go after Nick Fuentes. And it's probably, I mean, it's the timing is curious, guys, because Nick has been gaining traction. And Nick is this guy that, up until now, I mean, he's just been steadily growing. But the whole time there's been this resistance that builds up and builds up against him. Um, but frankly, he's been the most effective speaker for our point of view, which is a frankly anti Semitic, racist point of view. A sort of national socialist point of view is what American First is. America First. And I understand why people don't want to say that. But as I've been saying myself for a while now, my views are just defaulting to something like National Socialism, and that doesn't mean Nazi, um, though it could, and it's sad that in the West, National Socialism is completely discredited on the left and right. Uh, Actually, probably with a little more honesty on the left, uh, and a great deal of naivete on the right. You'll people like Charlie Kirk, and that sort of conventional, glib, huge swath of the conventional and glib on the right are going to tell you, oh my God, they're socialists. They share with the socialist ideas. And I so don't give a shit about that question anymore. And I don't think that's, those are what the question of capitalism versus socialism, two ill-defined terms, by the way, is important. But to me, it's not the question. And the question, of course, is ethnic. And frankly, I'm all for our country, frankly, defining itself in a racial fashion as primarily a country of European heritage Americans. This is probably never going to happen, obviously. But you have to have a theoretic basis for whatever you're going for. You have to have a theoretic ideal in mind, even if it's not achievable. And you have to have that like a Platonic ideal held in your mind. It's the perfect ideal of what you would have. Then you go out into the world and you do the practical. And I think to simply say, well, that's a non-starter. Well, I don't know anything that is a starter right now. I don't know that anybody has offered anything that will work. And indeed, if nothing will work, I just want to go down swinging, if that's the case. But the reason I support Nick Fuentes is because he's the only guy who seems to be remaining true to his anti Semitic and racist foundations, which I share for the most part, and gaining traction and gaining people. He doesn't have a plan either. I mean, what's his plan? He's going to run for president. Up until last year, maybe, his plan was to vote for Trump, But frankly, another reason why I support him is because I've kind of made the same journey. It's shameful that I make it at my late stage in life, and he's this kid who's made it relatively early on. But perhaps that's just, we're all making this shift. We're all making this remarkable shift, which is why, again, all of a sudden, Candace Owens decides she's going to have Nick on her show. and she's going to go hard after him. She's going to punch hard right. And then days later, she's on Tucker Carlson. Oh, shucks, gee whiz, Tucker. Here he is in his flannel shirt. And Tucker's making these ridiculous. Tucker, who claims to never be online, he claims he doesn't like own internet access or something. And he's making all of these accusations against Nick that sound like they come right off of Twitter. He's a gay boy, angry gay boy living in the mom's basement. Anyway, this is Atlas Thugged. I don't know who Atlas Thugged was. I just discovered his channel looking around for clips because I'm too lazy to make my own clips. I frankly don't even know how to do it. But Atlas Thugged, who does a good job, who's very based, here he has helpfully clipped. See, I've subscribed to him. You should too. And anyway, so here's Tucker and Candace ganging up on Nick Fuentes.
Yes, I've been around a long time. I know it when I see it.
Yeah. And when Tucker starts saying, I've been around a long time, man, I know when I see something's fucking daft is about to come down the pike.
Yeah, and I will say I don't understand it. We were very kind to him. Like, I truly, like, we almost said, like, we felt maybe he was a bit lonely. We should invite him back for dinner.
Her and her wealthy husband, I guess. Yeah, see, so here she is. This is something I hate to see anyway. Like, I was being nice to this guy. She ambushed him in the interview, which is fine. You take an interview, you should be ready for any fucking eventuality. Unless you signed a contract, we're only going to talk about this, that, and that, which I don't agree with doing. Interviews should be like freewheeling. Okay, you want to ambush me in an interview? Okay, I should be able to defend myself, right? That's fine. But her pretending like, oh, I took pity on this poor boy. That's not what happened.
I mean, that's how good of an experience I had.
It's clearly it's
and then it was a 180. So it's either A, it's being driven from like a little boy insecurity, and he just was so worried that he like just went on.
Yeah, okay. You see where they're going, right? And it's like this throughout. It's all this insubstantial stuff. You're gay. Interestingly enough, they don't call him a glowy, which is the other thing about Nick. What are the three things that are supposed to turn me off of Nick Fuentes? He's gay. I mean, look, here's a picture of him with his legs crossed. Doesn't he look gay? He's Mexican because he's got a Mexican grandparent, which means he's 1/8. Mexican typically means mestizo. It's not a fucking racial type. It's a nationality, obviously. But when we say Mexican, what we mean is mestizo, and these are the people mixed Spanish and Native American heritage. So if he's got a Mexican granddad, he's 1/8, Amerindian. Like I give a fuck, And what's the other thing? Oh, he's a glowy, which is interesting too. Okay, what's the play? I always say, what's the play? Because I hear lots of shit, and there's really only one way to know for sure. If you can find out who's funding somebody, and if they're being funded by one of these CIA front groups, okay, they're a glowy, they're an agent or an asset of the deep state of the CIA, however you want to play it. Naturally, but if without that to go on, what else do I have to say to look for? Okay, what's the play? I can kind of see the play with Candace. What's the play? If she was an asset, I don't think she is necessarily. Well, the play could be to make us look nuts in the Cass Sunstein. If you haven't read the Cass Sunstein paper about cognitive infiltration, I think that's the title of it, Cognitive Infiltration, where he says we should just plant crazy ideas on the right and let them bloom, and let these crazy ideas, like QAnon, say, or like Big Mike, or even, the moon landing is fake. which I don't know. There are a lot of you. There's only a few of you here. But you guys probably disagree with me, but call me a boomer. But I refuse to give up the moonlight. Anyway, the Cass-Sunstein cognitive infiltration model is let the crazy ideas bloom on the right to discredit them. And Candace certainly would fit that. She's talking about fucking Bridget McCrone, which, maybe there's a case there. Maybe it's real. I don't think it's beyond possibility. She's such a strange looking woman. It's such a strange relationship. McCrone looks like this, closet case maybe. But, it's so insubstantial, frankly. Ron Unz has written about this, saying, okay, maybe, the thing with Candace Owens is they're letting her go on and on about, the crazier theories that she's enthusiastically picks up. He picks it up the way, you or I or any one of us picks up ideas when we're newly enthusiastic about something, newly red-pilled, for instance. And then it's like crazy, and you're liable to pick up anything, and you're just not being circumspect. You're not playing long game. It's just all of a sudden you're enthusiastic about all kinds of crazy shit, like QAnon. Where's my man Eki? Is Eki still around? Is he still alive? Because Eki was into that QAnon shit. And I always think back to the old crew around the Luke Ford show. Anyway, I probably forgot to make my point. Unz has suggested, that there's not necessarily planting of ideas out there, but if a crazy idea gets traction like QAnon, and say it's not coming from the deep state, it's organic. Bridget McCrone is a man. Big Mike, oh, my favorite. Michelle Obama's a man. I'll throw your ass off a building if you're in, if we're together, and and you start talking about Big Mike with me, and I'm gonna say, let's go up on the roof. I want to show you something. Keep telling me about Big Mike and his giant penis that you saw on the Ellen show, right? Big Mike and his big penis in his pantsuit. You motherfucker, you son of a bitch. I will throw you off this fucking building like a gay pederast in Iran. I swear to God, not because I think you're a danger. You probably are. But just because I hate stupid so very much. I hate it. Anyway, so here's Nick and Nick. Here's Tucker and Candace. Now, it's very curious, again. I'm sorry, I'm always rambling. It's very curious that Nick's gaining traction, and there was this thing happening, and I don't know how organic it was, but there was this thing happening where people were promoting Nick, right? Nick Fuentes, who's kind of, he's kind of, since 2019, when he entered the scene, he's been steadily going along, and he's these little stumbling blocks, but he's his trend line, his graph has just been kind of upward. And recently, with Trump's great betrayal, and Trump's huge crash out, that is what the Trump administration now revealing itself as being little more than an Israel sort of janissary of Israel, just this pathetic, and nobody seemingly challenging Trump. I mean, the left still, for all the wrong reasons, all the stupid reasons, like Trump's a Nazi, Trump, he's anti-immigrant, all this stupid shit. And here is Trump just totally betraying us, and doing so in a way that it's just impossible not to simply conclude that he's wholly owned by Israel. he fears nothing but Israel. Nobody has any real influence over him uh, except for Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel, and the people who around him, the Jewish people like Witkoff and others around him that sort of hover around him in the same way that these Jewish people, Blinken and the other guy whose name escapes me right now, were sort of the handlers for Biden, right? So Biden was, he was like losing it. He was, cognizant 2 hours, his best 2 hours of the day. He was somewhat sharp, and then the rest of the time he was this old guy wandering off set. And they were all around him, just, pushing him in the right direction. I mean, Trump is little better than that. And morally, he's worse because he appears, though he may be declining cognitively, he's almost 80. He's always been this kind of dumb in his way. Um, but morally, he's worse because at least Biden was this idiot who was barely in touch with reality. He didn't know, all he was thinking about was, oatmeal. He was going to get oatmeal in an hour, Oh, what's for dinner? I'm going to get something soft and mushy to eat soon. Good, somebody change my diaper. Yeah, I mean, that's it. But Trump's still sentient, um, and the way he goes after people. And I think it was Fuentes who was talking about this. He might just come after us next. He's already setting us up with all of these laws he's instituting on behalf of Israel. Who the fuck is in the crosshairs of these laws, right? It's us. He's setting laws in place, right? I mean, the latest great idea is we're going to take away citizenship from naturalized citizens who criticize Israel. For decades, and even Trump didn't offer to do anything about this. We've had people, the Ilan Omars, big and small, pouring into the fucking country who just talk shit about America and want to lecture us, on what America means and everything else. And these people are just absolute disaster for us. Oh, fine, sleeping guy meme. And then, then October 7th happens and there's this great surge in anti-Israel sentiment around the Palestinians. And then it's, laser eyes awake, And of course, like you said, all these laws are going to be aimed at us. Trump's going to be gone in 3 years. And Trump now is already talking shit because he's catching so much hell over Epstein. And I'm not even that angry about the Epstein thing. I think it was just an influence operation. I don't think that, I know that blackmail is going on. Blackmail just like that, which I think almost certainly controlled Herbert Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, who controlled the FBI for years, who Whitney Webb talks about so much in her books, but he never went after the mafia. And people don't realize that for some reason the FBI never goes after the mafia, organized crime, in his 40 years. But the model, the Hoover blackmail model was they caught him. And so they went to him and said, we're not going to cause you any problems. We have a few specific things we're going to ask of you. But the moment you step out of line, and you're going to have a good deal of your own freedom, you're going to participate in this whole blackmail thing, in fact. But there are things you're not going to do, like prosecute the mafia and the mob, organized crime. Organized crime in America has been primarily a Jewish thing, and just another one of the many sucker plays in the culture has been this idea that the dumbass Italians have eagerly taken up. This idea that it's all the mafia, it's all Italian organized crime, it's all these goombas in New Jersey, you know, running this huge enterprise by controlling the fucking garbage companies, right? This idiocy when uh, it's really been largely a Jewish thing, organized crime. There's a higher level of which the mafia is just a part of it. The Jews fell for it. They even got one of the best Italian movie directors of all time to sort of fall for it. The Godfather movies, great movies, except three. Three is vile. But Godfather movies where they flattered the Italians and they say, yeah, that's right, that's us, We're the scary, secretive mafia, you know. And the Italians fell for it, right? And the Jews, as usual, they're just smart enough to know we're playing a longer game here. So we're going to let you guys play, Anyway, so Hoover doesn't prosecute organized crime in 40 years and the FBI because he's blackmailed. And he's blackmailed by powerful Jews in organized crime. Now, what they did was, this is why people think that the whole Epstein model was a sort of voluntary blackmail. I don't know. It could have been. It certainly had to be some of it. But that's what it became with Hoover. They said, no, what you have to do is, they had parties. They had fucking wild parties where Hoover and others would attend, people who were caught up in it. They actually indulged the same perversions that they used as blackmail against them. And these guys, and it becomes voluntary blackmail. They're already snared. So they say, okay, I'm going to have fun with it. And Hoover himself kept files, of course, on everybody else, and eagerly blackmailed people farther down. And the whole blackmail thing, it could really be just like levels of blackmail. Like there's, up here would be the Jews running the whole show, and then the level beneath, there are other people who are caught up by the Jews, who in turn are using the same methods on people below them till you get down, maybe 3 or 4 levels of this blackmailing going on. But I don't think it's as widespread as people think, because people are looking for an explanation. Yeah, rightly so. I mean, the other lack of shame, the lack of self-regard and self-respect evinced by the vast majority of U.S. politicians in Congress and Senate and the House both, right? All of these guys, just shamelessly promoting Israel. You look for an explanation, and you think, okay, sans mind control, what might it be? And they just have the goods on all these people. I'm always skeptical, though, to think that a thing could be that perfectly widespread and in effect. No. And what did I tweet about this recently? I think I tweeted about it. I think, frankly, you can't, it's not explained by money alone either, right? AIPAC throws a lot of money around. But still, I don't think the level of fealty, the level of control there's no precedent. There's absolutely no precedent. There's never been a situation like what we have in America, where you have this false democratic front, this false sovereignty, and you have this near unanimity of political actors and just virtually anybody in the cultural scene anywhere, anybody. You run a business, you cannot ascend past a certain height without bending the knee. No, it could be that they have the goods on literally millions. Or what else is it? Well, there's a lot of mind fuckery. There's the gaslighting, which is powerful. I mean, I only emerged from it like I don't know, 8 years ago. 2016, I was still not properly anti-Semitic. It's my own shame, but a guy who's 50 years old who's not properly anti-Semitic has no business talking about this shit. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Anyway, nothing can explain this. Money doesn't explain it alone. The gaslighting, that goes a long way. The whole idea that the World War II was the great war, and the Holocaust was the great evil of all history. But what else is there? There needs to be more, right? And I think what we're seeing, and because it's the aspect that is not really considered by these zombies, these NPCs that are our influential class of people. It's the part that they don't acknowledge or even understand themselves. They're probably not aware of it. But what they do is they honestly are impressed by Jewish success. Jews control money and information, and these are the true sources of power. And someone like a Dan Crenshaw, who's, he's like Tucker Carlson, they're like a 120 IQ guy, I didn't even want to use IQ because you could be a 120 IQ person and understand this stuff very well, but they're mid-level, mid-wits, for lack of a better term. And I think these people, they have something like Stockholm syndrome. They just respect the success of the Jews. And they're in awe of it. They fear it. They fear it. They worship it. Uh, and it's almost a religious thing, a sort of religion that operates on you like a mind virus at the same time. And I think, yeah, that these people, they want to join the winning team. That's all. And what's happening now with this incredible surge in anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment, on which Nick Fuentes is rising, is really scaring the shit out of them, and it really threatens to break the spell. And because, maybe put most simply, it's just that all this time, all these bitches, right, that are bending the knee, are just acknowledging the victory. The Jews are saying, you won. Like I always said, I've been saying it for years. The Jews won World War II. Don't forget your history books. Who won World War II? The Jews won it. Absolutely won it. They went to war with Germany, and they managed to throw the entirety of the Western power and the Soviets as well against Germany, and they won big time. Holocaust or no. If the Holocaust is real or fake, it doesn't matter. They won, and they're still, they've had a sort of empire going ever since. And these people, I keep thinking of Dan Crenshaw just because he's such a douche and he's got an eye patch. You gotta kind of hate a douche with an eye patch, right? But yeah, these people, they just, they go with the winner. And the fear now is that, well, if enough people say, fuck it, I don't care, they're not so much winning anymore. If they're not controlling the narrative, are they still winning? Maybe not. I always think of our old friend Luke Ford, converted to Judaism. He said himself, because they're rich and cool. Yeah, convert to Judaism, then he doesn't get to be rich or cool himself. But that's another story. You get what you deserve. You sell out. Sell out your birthright, right? Esau. And you get to be their bitch. Yeah, you get to be like a second-rate version of. But people prefer it. I'm sure Luke prefers it, right? He's not one of us. And you look at it and you see it. What happened with Luke? I mean, he turned on a dime on us. One day he woke up, and maybe he's controlled. Who knows? Maybe he got the word from above. But one day he just sort of woke up and said, I've been flirting with these losers, the gauche right. And, this is getting me nowhere. So I'm going to go back to, you know, just embrace convention. I always wonder at people who do what he did and what so many do. It was around COVID too, probably. No, it was pre-COVID. Yeah, it was long before COVID hit, actually, that Luke sort of turned on us. But these people who come and they said, "No, I don't mean to pick on Luke Ford." Many people did the same thing about the same time, and it's really weird. It's hard to explain. It could be controlled. It could be just herd behavior. They're like starlings all turning together in a mob. But you just wonder about these people who decide I'm going to be conventional because because those losers over there on the far right, they're the losers. Guy like Richard Spencer, I think he's like totally conventional now. Last time I saw him, um, all right, Tucson is going to put it more plainly than I would. But the last time I saw Richard Spencer, he was tweeting about the NFL football. Yeah, the Falcons got a good team this year, sort of shit. Like, motherfucker, I will throw you off a building. I will invite you up to the rooftop to see the view. Throw you off the building like an Iranian pederast, you fucking. Just because it's so cringy. But I wonder about these guys. Like, okay, so now you're conventional. And you're posting like, here I got the shot, and here I am with my little, showing my little scrawny arms and my Band-Aid they gave me when I got my vax. Third booster, man. Why do you even get up in the morning? Now, why do you even just shut if you're conventional, you could just sit home, right? Just sit home and be conventional. There, you have nothing to contribute. Unless, of course, you're controlled, and then you're supposed to go out there and add your voice, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of individuals, I spent my life like this. I confess, we're really looking around us to see what people are saying, and that's another part of why the Jews just have been winning beyond all reasonable expectation for so long, beyond even the money and the controlling Hollywood and the media. They've been winning this whole time on that principle that most people want to be in that herd. They don't want to be a loser. They don't want to be gauche. They don't want to be fringy or cringy, right? And they just want to be, like our good friends I mentioned previously. They just want to be with the cool kids. And that's falling apart. And again, that's falling apart. And here we see Nick, and I can't even think of another individual who's so notably benefiting from it. But with Trump's crash out, with Trump's complete collapse as a legitimate guy, and I just saw it. You've seen it. This trend emerged. And again, everything is sort of echoed and everything is magnified out now because of social media. One person peeps up, another guy quickly grabs it, and it spreads meme-like, depending on, on how much it grabs the individual, And if it appeals to the guy who repeats it, it's going to appeal to another dozen people who in turn will repeat it, and on it goes, and this is of course very dangerous for the Jews in power. So Nick is getting up there, and everybody starts mentioning what was this little fad that I'm talking about. People were saying Nick was right. Nick Fuentes was right. Well, there are a few people that were right, We were right here. I want to note, of course, nobody knows who we are. But they were saying Nick was right. He predicted all this shit about Trump. And he's been getting a lot of mileage out of it. That's still a thing now. And he was emerging somehow. Nick Fuentes is this guy who, the other people are good friends of ours, and people like, good Kevin Grace, I'm sure, despises Nick and hates to see him rising and would love to see it end, you know. Um, Previously mentioned Spencer probably had problems with Nick, right? A lot of people on the right had problems with Nick. And a lot of people hate to see it happening, but Nick is, he's like pressing on the glass against the mainstream. I just watched something earlier with Glenn Greenwald is talking about this, what I'm talking about now, this whole thing, the spectacle with the triad, Candace, Tucker, and Nick. And he was like, just talking about Nick like he's a normal guy. Now, Nick is openly anti-Semitic. He's openly racist. He's been awful in their eyes on the subject of women. He's broken all these taboos, and yet there are people who sort of straddle the line. And Glenn Greenwald, well, he straddles a lot of things, I know, but there are people who straddle the line. Even Tucker still straddles the line between far and mainstream. And they're like saying they're talking about Nick Fuentes, without sputtering about him being anti-Semitic or sputtering about him being racist. So anyway, there's Nick, and he's like threatening to break things. He's threatening to break the glass ceiling. And then, out of the blue, Candace interviews him, and it's this ambush interview. And 2-3 days later, she's on Tucker, and they're trying to cast it. And now Tucker's joining in, and they're gonna, it's like this was planned from the start, almost, right? This is supposed to be the two and the 1-2 punch. They're losing bigly. If the comments you see or anything else mean anything. Yeah, so here they are. Let's let them talk. Atlas Thugged has clipped both this Candace and Tucker's little convo, and then Nick's excellent response.
On the attack because he doesn't know how to have normal relations after being banned everywhere.
Well, I think there's that
could be one element.
The angry gay kid thing going.
If you don't hate Tucker for that, I mean, there's just nothing left. Look at Candace's look. She's like, oh, he went there. The angry gay kid. I liked Tucker for a while. I mean, I still don't dislike him. I mean, he's still talking about some good things. He's still, though he's trying to play a gatekeeper, he's actually a gateway. But he's always been silly and glib. Like with the Epstein case, there was a while where, when he was covering Epstein, he could not say Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who's in jail now. He couldn't say her name without, like saying it mockingly. Ghislaine Maxwell. And I don't want to defend Ghislaine, or whatever, however you say it, Maxwell. But it's just lame. It doesn't work, Tucker. It doesn't fucking work. Anyway, I don't care that she has this pretentious name,
Going on.
Yeah. Or it's what you're saying, where he does this, he's lying to everybody and pretending that things are one way when it's not. I can say
Why is he attacking Joe Kent, who, Joe Kent worked as a CIA contractor, paramilitary contractor.
That's why.
He was in the U.S. military for years fighting our neocon wars.
Yeah, and he's pro-Israel. And he looks like Joe Kent looks like an 80s, TV heartthrob, which is weird.
His wife was killed in Syria in one of those wars. Joe Kent is the single most sincere critic.
You sure about that?
And I would say the one with the most credibility in the United States to say this foreign policy is bad. It killed my wife. I was a part of it. Joe Kent is actually someone the CIA doesn't like at all because he understands how it operates. And for Nick Fuentes, who's like some child from Chicago, to go after him specifically, one congressional seat in Washington State.
That is random.
It's not random, though. It's the opposite of random. Joe Kent was number one on the list of people they wanted to knock off, people who believe in our neocon foreign policy. They wanted Joe Kent out because he could stand up and say,
He said Joe.
I've got the receipts. My wife was killed in Syria.
You said Joe.
You had to take that guy out. And Nick Fuentes, this child, this weird little gay kid in his basement.
Why do it? It doesn't help you. It does not help you. This weird little gay. I mean, Nick goes after that better than I could. But I mean, it's such it demonstrates a complete lack of awareness of who his audience is, as Nick points out. He doesn't even get it. He still doesn't get it. You know, and it's like he's getting his material off of you know, the dregs of X/Twitter. You know, I'm surprised he doesn't say he's Mexican.
Man, in Chicago, is participating in a super PAC to bump off Joe Kent. Like, I've been around this my whole life. I know what that is. It's just an organized effort.
Yeah.
And he also did the thing that David Duke always did, including to me, which is like, oh, yes, my friend. And everyone's like, oh, Tucker Carlson's been endorsed by David Duke. I've been making like the anti-racist argument my whole life.
Right.
Like, I'm not for David Duke.
That's not a.
Do I think David Duke
that's not a feature
is
anymore.
right when he's against affirmative action? You bet I do. But I'm not for David Duke. But David Duke would try to discredit people by hugging them. And that's exactly what Fuentes did. He goes out there, meet all these people, show up, hi, I'm Nick Fuentes. Can I get my picture with you? That's a campaign to destroy credible voices on the right. And Fuentes is part of it. And I know.
Interesting. Do you think that's what Nick is doing? I don't know.
I'm inviting endless trouble by saying this because, you know, this is a kid with a lot of spare time, but it's just a fact. And I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
And I you can believe me or not, but I know what I'm talking about.
I can confirm he's dishonest. I mean, there's no, so it's like you use that as your, like, I could not determine what his motives were. And I said, you know what? I don't have time for this. I gave you a fair chance, gave you a fair shake, and you are a fundamentally dishonest human being. You know, there was no.
What is she talking about? I watched much of that interview. It's painful. But he's just, you know, he's being Nick Fuentes. You knew what you were getting. You know where he stands on all this shit. You thought you would bring him on and you know, give him a drubbing because, you know, you thought apparently, like a conventional thinker nowadays, that, you know, he's weak in all these areas. He's anti-Semitic. That's a weakness. He's racist. That's a weakness. Frankly, the only weakness I see is this weird fascination with the Kanye. I mean, Kanye's a loon. Nick, he's just fucking crazy. He tweets about how he brags about how he spends his whole day sitting around. Did he say smoking weed? He might have said smoking weed. Doing something, maybe some drug, and watching porn, you know, which means he's jacking off. He's a guy who could get, right? He could get almost any woman, right? And he's still masturbating to pornography. And he talks like he's 13, right? And he can't put together a coherent sentence half the time, right? And he's obviously on something most of the time. Who cares if he has $1 billion? He's fucking crazy. You cannot trust that guy. Tucker, by the way, interviewed him. And Ye was relatively controlled, but he was Ye. Like I said, he's this 13-year-old boy. He kind of, you can see there's potential for him to be intelligent. I mean, you know, at least he's not like most rappers and then all he thinks about is his own dick. You know, I mean, he's interesting. I mean, even sympathetic. I think he's sympathetic. When I say he sounds like a 13-year-old boy, he inspires sympathy in me. He's got that crying voice. He's like always hurt. He's like a guy who never grew up. You know, I kind of sympathize with him. But he's fucking crazy and he's got nothing to offer any of us. And Tucker interviewed him, and like I said, he was relatively controlled, but there they went. And Tucker, mentions it in like the next program or whatever. Oh, I talked to Kanye, and he's clearly not crazy. He's an intelligent young man. Fucking, did you pay attention to the interview you gave? Because I watched part of it. That's not what I saw. Interestingly enough, and that was right before Kanye crashed out, right? That was right before Kanye went openly anti-Semitic. That's not my problem with Kanye, obviously. And somehow Tucker Carlson not only survived it, I don't remember Tucker catching a lot of flack. I thought it was strange. This might suggest that Tucker is, if not controlled, protected, right? Just like Unz has this idea that Candace Owens and her stupid fucking Bridget Macron is a guy obsession, is not a Cass Sunstein plant. It's not something she's doing for the deep state, obviously, but the deep state is encouraging it. They're letting it go. They're not pushing back that much on it because they like that it makes Candace Owens and all these people who like Candace look like a fucking lunatic. Likewise, Tucker somehow just skated right through. He interviews Kanye, he praises him, and it was literally like 2 days later, Kanye's on X talking about the Jews. I love it. God bless you, Kanye. But it's curious that Tucker caught almost no flack for that. And he's catching flack all the time. This might have been, I don't think he was on Fox. I think he was already off of Fox when he interviewed Ye. But Tucson says they both blew all their credibility with that interview. I don't see that Nick did. I mean, one might have that opinion, but I mean, the effect that I see happening out there is that Nick won, and a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are, to the extent that it changed anything in who was getting support, and Nick clearly, a lot more people shifted toward Nick after this. And to the extent that they're choosing, and I don't even choose between these people. I was cool with Tucker until recently, but I think he's kind of a dork. But I always knew he was kind of stupid. I always said it. He's kind of a dummy. He wore a bow tie for all those years. But anyway, no, I think Nick won. And I think the reason, and you know how much I resist the idea that there's control here. But, I mean, it just stinks that Nick is gaining all this traction. He's getting, like I said, he's pressing up against respectability, or a kind of respectability. And here comes Candace. I'm going to take him down. Foolish lady. Silly rabbit, right? You're just outgunned, honey. And then, like, a day later, 2 days later, she's on Tucker, and Tucker is foolish boy. Thinks, yeah, we're going to take down Nick Fuentes. Both of these guys lose credibility. Maybe that's what you were talking about. Yeah, thanks, Tucson. I agree. Tucson says Tucker and Candace here both lose. Yeah. Sorry that I misunderstood you, Tucson. Yeah, both of these people have lost a great deal of credibility. They'll weather it. But, yeah. Especially Tucker just going directly to this. He lives in his basement. He's a gay kid. And Tucker's the guy, right? He's the guy who's going to, like he said, I've been anti-racist this whole time. Like it's not a feature, Tuck. And he'll probably tell you, he has no problem with what people do in the privacy of their own homes, man. Right? He hasn't been homophobic either, right? So he's going to go there and just look incredibly silly.
There was no reason to do it. If he had not done that show and screamed and yelled, his followers would have been like, oh, that was an interesting conversation between two people who agreed some, disagreed some, and like that was it. It was interesting that he got there. He doesn't want to be, and I can tell you that he doesn't want to be anywhere but where he is. He doesn't want to have normal relations. And it did sort of feel, and I said that to him, that he's like responding to orders somewhere, because why are you attacking me?
Well, who
Why,
are the
what,
fund-
what,
who
why
are
are
the
you attacking Dave
funders?
Smith? What is the issue with Dave Smith? And he couldn't answer the question.
Exactly.
He couldn't answer the question. He was just like, well,
The
I didn't
fakest
see
thing
that
I've ever
part.
seen.
and I'm like, why do you hate Dave Smith over Joe Rogan?
But Nick did not take this lightly. With what many are saying is his greatest clapback of all time, here is the uncut 7-minute response.
I'm being accused of being the CIA by Peter Thiel's best boys, by Tucker Carlson with his daddy. Tucker Carlson's, and you know what? Here's the other thing. Tucker Carlson said I'm a weird gay kid in the basement. Yeah, and I'm from Chicago. You're right. Well, okay, you're not right about all of that.
Are you?
But I wasn't born with
Peter
a
Puffer?
silver spoon in my mouth. Tucker Carlson says, I have so many trust funds, I never have to work. Tucker went to a $45,000 per year private high school, then a $45,000 per year selective Ivy League school in New England. Tucker Carlson's daddy was a Reagan appointee. And then, after years of bragging about being an elite, bragging about being so out of touch and so rich, now he's going to be the spokesperson for all the white people. Now he's going to roll up his sleeves. I just like to hunt and fish in my log cabin. I care about Klarna and credit card debt. But then when it comes to me, I'm one of the real disaffected white people. You want to talk about me and them? I am them. He says Nick Fuentes is leading all of the disaffected young white men. I am a disaffected young white man. I was a precocious, intelligent, young white college student who went to Boston University, who was pro-Trump and red-pilled by Trump and animated by Trump's message of America first. And I asked questions about Israel, and I was punished for it. I did it years before Tucker Carlson started talking about Israel last year. And I sacrificed, and I was targeted by the ADL, by the SPLC, by the federal government, by the conservative movement that both Candace and Tucker were a part of. Candace and Tucker had nothing to say about Israel until it became unavoidable last year. Not popular, but unavoidable. And now they want to gatekeep me out and do this personality attack and say I'm a bitter loser in my basement from Chicago. I'm a kid from Chicago. And they slipped up there because they forgot for 1 second that they're pretending to be the spokesperson for exactly that kind of person. Tucker's mask slipped, and he forgot for a minute that for 8 years he's been pretending to care about the plight of weird kids in their parents' basement who are broke and didn't go to an Ivy League school, living in cities that don't matter like Chicago, not like Washington, D.C. or LA or New York. And that's why he had such disdain and contempt for me in that moment. Between the personality attacks, he's lonely, he's weird, he lives in a basement. I'm sorry, did you guys forget that that's your target audience that you're trying to pander to? Did you forget that for 2 seconds? And I'm the inauthentic person? I am that person. I am a spokesman for the disaffected white man because I am one, and you two are not. Candace Owens got married to British royalty worth $200 million after meeting him for 2 weeks on Zoom. What the fuck is even that about? And Tucker Carlson's dad ran the CIA's propaganda empire fighting the Soviet Union. He went and fought with the Contras when he was in college. When I was in college, I was doing a webcam show in my friend's dorm room criticizing Israel. So who's the CIA cutout? Who's the inauthentic one? Who's the crazy, hateful one? I would never describe a well-meaning young white person who's trying to get ahead as a weird kid in his basement from Chicago. And what is that supposed to mean? What is wrong with being from Chicago? What is wrong with being weird? What is wrong with living in your basement?
Yeah, I've always hated it.
That's a lot of people because of the problems you claim to care about.
I've always hated the living in the basement thing because it's such a fallacious bit of reasoning, it's just cheap. It's ad hominem. You know, you just say, oh, you know, Joe's a loser. Don't listen to him. Joe just made an excellent point, but he's living in his basement, right? We mentioned Luke. We have to keep mentioning Luke. I mean, that's what that's what Luke became. It was just all about Don't be one of the cringe kids. Be the cool kids. And even if you accepted that bullshit and thought, oh yeah, okay, I don't, like the memes goes, oh, I guess I don't want a country anymore, right? Even if you did accept it, there's no route for us, into the cool kids. The cool kids aren't that cool, right? They don't want us. They don't really exist, What are they even talking about, right? Like Luke used to say. When this whole thing, it just became patently, transparently about him trying to dissuade us from even thinking politically, right? And he would come on and say, think about making money, think about improving your life, stay in your lane, do this, do that. Don't think about these things. There's no future in them. This guy who does, he was doing 2 streams a day, right? He would do a stream every night, and then he would do a little walking stream when he's walking home from his shitty fucking menial job that he never would admit to working. I always had the impression that he was working as a gopher for some rich Jews, because you would see him about the same time during the week walking, down the same neighborhood in L.A. Oh, he's walking home. He's on his way home and he can't help himself. He decides to pull out his phone on his way home from, his job as a gopher, chai waller for some real Jews. And he's going to do a little, stupid stream. Anyway, maybe that's not true. I don't know why I keep talking about Luke. I'll confess to being petty myself. There are still people from those times, and it's gonna be 10 years ago soon. There's still people that I genuinely dislike for around the show. The people decided that I sucked. People who actually suck. People who suck will often get it. Get the idea that you suck. Because in their suckery, they have no discernment of what actual sucking is.
Out. Tucker's at Turning Point USA extolling the predatory nature of usury and how it's preventing young white men from getting homes. And then the week after says, you're in your mom's basement. So which is it? Do you care about Klarna and people going into debt to order pizzas and home ownership being impossible? Or do you think that's a contemptible, low-status thing to be ridiculed and mocked? Who's pandering here exactly? Because that wasn't you. You were born to the Swanson family fortune and your daddy who ran the CIA. My dad didn't even...
Ran the propaganda arm of the CIA, which is curious, and you should probably stress that fact. The propaganda arm. Not that I think Tucker is that sophisticated that he really perhaps even understands the psychological manipulation. That he's more likely manipulated than manipulating. But still, it's curious. His dad ran the propaganda arm of the CIA. And Tucker pretended, Nick might mention it here, until recently Tucker pretended to not know. I think there's an interview where he claims that he found out after his father's death, which is, it's unbelievable. And it's also provably false because somebody went back and found where he had mentioned, his awareness of this long before his father passed. But anyway.
Even graduate college. My dad worked for the tollway. His dad died of a drug overdose in the 70s. My mother's father was a garbage man in Chicago, and he committed suicide. He was a veteran of World War II. Who's the CIA cutout? Who's the poser? Who is America? I am America. Chicago is America. That's an American story. I didn't go to Yale Law School and suck Peter Thiel's dick and then get a...
You know what the guy says in American Psycho, that whole Yale thing. What Yale thing, asks the police interrogator. Oh, homosexuality, cocaine use.
Manicure at a venture capital firm, advising Rebecca Mercer.
Yale, of course, was the most, I think, I might be wrong about this. He talks about this. He's got another video out where he talks about the neocons, how long they've been recruiting people out of those Ivy League universities, and Yale was the hotbed for this. Yale was like ground zero for the recruitment of, promising talent that would go on to be, guys who would join the CIA or become CIA assets in one way or the other.
And writing Hillbilly Elegy and talking about it at the Aspen Institute, that's your biographical credibility?
Yeah, and Hillbilly Elegy, I haven't read it, but I've heard that it's really all about him kind of throwing the family under the bus and talking, disparagingly about how white trash they are.
How many of these disaffected white people that love Trump because he's racist went to Yale Law School and got plucked out by Peter Thiel, whoever he even is? Peter Thiel, with his fixation with the Antichrist, this homosexual who's involved with the CIA, wants to live forever and govern the world with AI. Yeah, that's really relatable.
Yeah.
That's really relatable.
At least he's not living in his mom's basement in Chicago, right? Yeah. Peter Thiel, who looks weird. He's got some weird fucking like scarring on this side of the head, unless that's retouched photography. But seems like he's got something going on with this side of the head. He's always like oily.
Do another show with him and Curtis Yarvin. Do another
There's
show.
fucking
Do
Yarvin.
the 47th show with JD Vance.
Yeah, I do a show with Curtis Yarvin where he talks in circles like he does and doesn't say anything. He could just sum it all up. And, monarchy isn't so bad, which I don't necessarily disagree with. You could just sum it up and say that and make it in a few points. But he has this talent for talking in circles that makes dumb people think it's, he's saying something very profound. And Tucker said exactly that to Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin probably got a fucking stiffy. And Tucker says, well, I'm not really following what you're saying. It's all very smart, but it sounds awesome. Tucker basically said, I'm too stupid to understand what you're saying, but it sounds so intelligent. I'm going to assume that it's brilliant. That's basically what he told Curtis Yarvin. It reminds me of this gag. There's a great movie. It's one of the few movies from, I forget the guy's name. This guy who made 40-Year-Old Virgin, and he made a bunch of these fucking comedies that were funny, but kind of shitty too. But there's this good one they made called Walk Hard, right? And it's a send-up of the Johnny Cash biopic, right? And their character goes through all these phases, and he goes through his Dylan phase, and they have. What's funny about the movie is, I forget the guy's name. This actor, very familiar actor, very funny guy, but he plays guitar and sings well. So, the music they have, the musical bits are pretty funny. So he goes through his Dylan phase, and he's up there doing Dylan, and it's Dylan like free associating, making no sense Dylan, right? And he's just going on and on. And the three guys are backstage, his bandmates, and one of them says, "What the fuck is he saying?" And the other guy turns to him and says, "You guys are idiots. This is brilliant." That's basically what Tucker did with Yarvin.
It is insulting, and it is insulting to everybody's intelligence for Tucker to sit there and say he doesn't know his dad is in the CIA, for him to say that I'm in the CIA. What a joke. What a sick joke. Especially after everything that's happened to me. And unlike what Candace Owens says, she says, what happened to him when he was 18? What happened to me is ongoing. Okay? Unlike Candace Owens and Tucker, I never got a contract with Ben Shapiro and Rupert Murdoch. I was on Maker Support. I was on Patreon. I was on D Live. I had to fight for everything I have. I didn't get $1 million contract from Turning Point. I didn't get $20 million from Fox News. My daddy didn't get me a job in Arkansas.
And to add some additional housekeeping, a claim from Tucker that is getting eviscerated online is that he only recently found out his dad was involved with the CIA, and that somehow Nick knew about it before he did. First class clips with the receipts here shows us that is not true at all.
And he's attacking my dad as a CIA, his dad's in the CIA or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's no, untrue. And my father dies, and I learn actually, yeah, was involved in that world. Completely shocked by it. So when I applied to CIA, and I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin, like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously my father worked in conjunction with CIA. I mean, that's what that is. And I tried to join the CIA, but I'm not being false about it.
I think it is safe to say
you are kind of being false about it, though. Yeah. Because elsewhere you're acting like it was a total surprise. Yeah, anyway. All right, we'll let this guy have the last word because it's less than a minute.
Point that the entire political landscape is threatened by Nick. And I think it's obvious that with the resurgence of him and others on the most popular platforms, that it's an indicator they have no idea what to do with the Overton windows slamming to the right. Millions of Americans clamoring to see and hear more of the most banned man on the planet. The Streisand effect is and will always remain undefeated. That is where I will leave it. Let me know your thoughts. How far do you think Tucker and Nick will take this? I don't know about you, but I'm hoping for a 7-game series. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Smash that like button.
All right. Yeah.
And now.
All right. Anyway, that was that. Okay. Thank you. What's his name? Atlas Thugged. Well done. Thank you. We've used your material here, and I hope people here. We've got 8 whole people here. Some of them may, 1 or 2 of them may subscribe to your channel. So, don't hate on us for pirating your stuff. Yeah. Anyway, enough about Nick. Nick, I the reason I don't often speak up about this, especially when his personality is involved, I'm going to come on, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm Team Nick, I'm pro Nick, and then tomorrow, it's going to come out that Nick is, in fact, a deviant or something. I just know it. I curse people. It's the day-old curse. What else were we going to talk about? Oh, Howard Stern. Okay. Howard Stern, they're saying he's getting fired. He's not getting his contract renewed. Excuse me. The story is that Sirius. Who the fuck? Does anybody use this shit? Satellite radio, like it came and went, or it's still there, but I mean, it's like, satellite radio is a weird thing. It's something that I would have thought when there was no internet, when there was no YouTube, because I just have YouTube Red and I use their music service, and that's awesome. And if I want music in the car, wherever, I'm playing it off of YouTube. And people will use that. YouTube, SoundCloud, what's the other one? The other one that kind of sucks now. It's green. I don't use it anymore. What is it? Anyway, you know what I mean. It's just, who the fuck cares now? I mean, I would have when it was all terrestrial radio, no internet, no streaming. Oh, ad-free radio. Is it even ad-free, though? They probably have ads on fucking Sirius. It was so stupid. I was a regular Stern listener from the time, well, with big gaps, because I think I moved to Seattle at one point in the 90s, and he wasn't up here. And then he turned up. Then I found out one day that he'd been on the radio here for years. But from the very first day they broadcast him in L.A., up until about the time that he went to Sirius, I was on and off, like a daily listener. There were stretches, like a year, 2 years, where I just listened every day at work or something. I was listening to him at 9/11. I thought they did a great job with the 9/11 show. Um, I thought he was often hilarious. I had many a good laugh at the Howard Stern show. The whole time, though, I kind of the best part of the show, and I've heard other people say this, was the improvising or apparent improvising he would do at the end of the show when Robin Quivers read the news. Robin Quivers would pick news art, and maybe they looked at him before, maybe not, but she would find stuff in the news to read that would prompt, these excellent tirades, improvs from Howard Stern. And that was often very funny. And one of the best things about Howard Stern was he was racist, and he wasn't afraid to make fun of black stupidity, for instance. He wasn't afraid to make fun of feminist silliness, and the worst, I guess that people liked the interviews, but I always found them kind of cringy and obnoxious. And even as, I liked him, and I liked him for being this guy who was politically incorrect, we thought, right? There was this aspect of him that was just obvious, that the guy just wanted, despite, having carved out for himself this position as, the bad boy, having sort of invented, somebody elsewhere said he sort of invented the podcast. And that's what a good Howard Stern show, which would go like 3 hours or more, right? On the West Coast, you would get it. They would air the live feed like before 6 o'clock, I think. And then at 6 o'clock, they would interrupt the live feed and go to the start and play, from there on a tape. The guys might still be in the studio in New York going, because they would go as long, which was awesome. They'd go as long as the show was producing, right? They had that last segment with the news segment, and maybe, Stern was on that day, doing well that day, and maybe he had good guests that were sitting in, and they would just riff on the news stories, and that could go on for another hour or two, which was awesome. It was like the original podcast, like somebody else has said. It's like a really good podcast. But even through all of that, I didn't really like the parts of the show that were supposedly the appeal, the celebrity interviews. Because they were supposed to be these great outrageous interviews, but they were just childlike. What was so great and outrageous about them was every woman, every sort of hot female actress that came on the show, he would ask about any lesbian experiences. This old cliche, which doesn't even exist anymore, right? Because it's so silly, of straight guys obsessed with lesbianism. Something that the pornography is completely destroyed, along with every other sort of, quaint male fantasy, right? But, it was just like, okay, and people are impressed, I guess, with how he dared to ask these questions, and these celebrities kept coming on, because they were obviously gaining something from coming on the show. And it was like, if the actress was white, have you ever had sex with a black man? It's just these stupid shit, but I always hated the interviews, mostly hated them. And and even occasionally they would do bits, and those were about 50-50. If they had a produced bit, which I think became just nothing, they didn't hardly do any towards the end. Like I said, I stopped listening in 2005 when he went to Sirius. And as much as I listened regularly, I had no interest in going and getting fucking subscription to this stupid fucking idea, satellite radio, So I guess I didn't like it that much. But it was evident that the guy worshipped celebrity. He worshipped money. And here he was, this guy who was a remarkable position, thoroughly disreputable on one hand and very successful on the other. And he was having people come through, all these celebrities, big time celebrities, come through and submit themselves to this sort of ordeal, right? Where he would ask them stuff and they would indulge maybe in this banter that they couldn't get away with anywhere else. It was really weird. It was like, Mardi Gras or something, right? It was like, what's the phrase that escapes me right now? But this indulgence from morality, that you see, that's been a thing in many societies for time immemorial, the holiday from the regular moral restrictions. But so he's occupying this weird space, but the whole time I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this guy because, despite the fact that he says all these things, he appears to him. I think I realized this when he had somebody on who was a star, a well-known actor, a good actor, I forget who it was, but somebody doing independent films who was doing films that weren't making, who wasn't doing big box office, right? But an interesting person and everything else this guy was awesome. And Stern kept making fun of him because he's not making big money, right? There's no Ghostbusters in his repertoire. And I'm thinking to myself, is that what it's about? Like these shitty fucking big box office movies, like, you don't have a fucking Titanic on your resume, right? And it was always clear. And then he got to make that movie, right? He had this stupid book, and he made a movie out of it. And who did he? Ivan Reitman. Ivan Reitman produces, and it's what's her name, Betty something. This female director, right? And they're probably thinking about how they had, it would help them to have a female director because he still was drawing some controversy for his supposed misogyny. Private Parts. But he goes and makes Private Parts. And I've never made it past, I watched like the first 15, 20 minutes and I thought, this is such fucking dreck. And he went out. So here's this guy, and he's like fucking the bad boy of the whole world and shit, right? The big racist, sexist, And he goes and makes this Ivan Reitman film. I mentioned Ghostbusters earlier. He goes and he seeks to make the most conventional milquetoast fucking movie. That's all about him and his wife, who he later divorced, right? And it's all about this sweet story about him and his wife as he forges a successful career as the bad boy on radio. And it was just awful from start to finish. The opening scene was insane. I mean, the opening scene, I think it's the opening or the second scene. A beautiful woman enters a plane, and there she sees it's Howard Stern sitting next to her empty seat. And she's disappointed. Maybe she knows who Howard Stern is, or she doesn't like the way he looks. But in this scene, you see Howard sitting there, and it looks like he's submitted to. Do they still do this? The fucking the glam thing. What do they call it? The makeover? Right? Women used to get makeovers at the counter at fucking whatever. At a high-end boutique, they'd get makeovers and get their picture taken, right? Here, look, I'm beautiful because I've had a makeover. I swear to God, it's like they gave him a makeover. He's a weird-looking guy, obviously. He's an odd-looking fellow. But he's sitting there in his hair. He's got long hair. Fucker wears a wig now, obviously, but he's long hair, and it's glorious, and it's all just like amazing, and it's all like perfectly placed. And they've obviously like done him up where he actually looks good, right? He doesn't look like Howard Stern at all. But I'm just thinking, this is the movie, right? This is the fucking movie they're going to give us. he thought he was going to be a star after that movie. He thought he was going to be a big movie star and he was going to make like rom-coms and shit. I just know it. So he went out and made a shitty movie because he's this guy who at the end of the day, and it's why he fell off and became this anti-Trump douche. Because at the end of the day, what he really wanted this whole time was respectability. And, you know what I mean? He wanted to be the richest, most famous asshole in the world. You know, just like every other rich, famous asshole. Should we watch this? He's going to attack Sydney Sweeney. He's going to join that bandwagon. Let's watch it. Mike 0H.
Now, ever since that American Eagle ad dropped featuring Sydney Sweeney having good genes across all forms of social media and was
Another idiotic thing. We won't spend time on it, but yeah.
even all over mainstream media, it still is to this very day. We have a lot of Hollywood celebrities coming forward and expressing their concerns over this advertisement. We know that Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, Sonny Holston, among others out there, have displayed their criticism about Sydney Sweeney's advertisement with American Eagle, and the number of celebrities, they are growing. They are snowballing and basically presenting their issues, and one of which now includes Howard Stern, which, by the way, after almost 20 years, or 20 years at this point, his contract deal with SiriusXM may very well be coming to a close by the tail end of 2025. We'll talk.
Sydney Sweeney doesn't look that good here. You know what I mean? Kind of like the way she looks here, but I mean, she's not like stunningly beautiful in this picture. I guess that's the idea. I mean, she looks like a hot chick you'd think you might actually have a chance with here.
Talk more about that. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. And thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now look, we all know that Sydney Sweeney's commercial, her advertisement with American Eagle, it was genius. Not only the play on words was genius, but we all know that this is driving up sales. It's driving up stocks for, of course, you know, American Eagle. We know that their stock is going through the roof. And one thing about all of this is that we know that the woke mob, as they like to call it, right? They are losing their minds over Sydney Sweeney's.
The woke mob, as you like to call it, and lots of people call it that. In fact, you know, I don't use it because it's, you know, we got to find a new set of phrases. But anyway, go ahead, Mike. Sorry. Here we are using the guy's material and
advertisement now, one of which includes Howard Stern, which unfortunately is turning this into a political talking point yet again and displaying his criticism about Sydney Sweeney's ad. Let's get into it. Now, one thing about Howard Stern, I will say, is that he's not the same Howard Stern that he was 20, 30, 35 years ago. There's no question about that. However,
could you imagine Howard Stern's, you know, 10 years ago? Sydney Sweeney comes along and it would be just, you know, oh, we're going to interview her and we're going to ask her all the same stupid fucking questions and it's going to be, yeah. It's funny, I've heard clips from the Howard Stern show, like recent clips. Sorry. People play them just to show you how shitty the show is. And you hear it. And it sounds just like the old show. I mean, it's the same format, the same back and forth dynamic between him and Robin Quivers, right? Except he doesn't, it's not funny anymore, right? Because he won't say racist things or sexist things, right? So he's got to try and do his act, and that's probably the way it's been for years for him. He's going to try and do his act without this content, you know what I mean? And maybe there's some justice here in that this guy has got to realize that, you know, it's never really been you, Howard. It's not like we love your personality that much. You know, it's been the content that you've dared to cover, you know. And when you try to clean up your act and be the, you know, the conventional, respectable asshole that you always aspired to be underneath somehow, you know, the people just drifted away. Plus, you're on Sirius XM. I mean, 2005, I remember. he did some obnoxious show. What's his last show on so-called terrestrial radio? And by the way, you know, he like owned that radio station that he worked out of in New York, right? Whatever, WXRK, I think is what it was. Right, he like owned that station. He had run of the place, right? They weren't giving him any shit for his show because he was doing so well. He was making a shitload of money, but he bolted for Sirius XM because you could say fuck, and he claims, I guess, that it was all about the censorship, and it wasn't really censorship. It was just that periodically they would catch hell for something he said. But it was the money, because Sirius dumped a shitload of money on him, and they thought they were going to build this brand, this industry, right? Didn't they buy out another? There were two of them. There were two major competing. It's a stupid fucking idea that, doesn't even know why fucking satellite radio exists. I don't even understand why it's a fucking viable business model, right? People tell me they put it automatically in Ford trucks, and that's the only thing that keeps it going. They were going to build this whole fucking industry around Howard Stern, right? And I guess it did well. It's 20 years, and he's getting like $100 million. They say a year. Somewhere else I heard it's $100 million every 5 years, so it's $20 million a year. But Howard's been there having success, I guess, for 20 years, up until recently, up until falling off drastically in the last few years, falling to Trump like many other people. Of course, maybe his cancellation is happening because, like people infer regarding Colbert and others, that the USAID money is drying up. It's entirely possible. There are so many things I see in the culture that I don't understand the viability, the financial viability of so much of this stuff. Like many of us in these movies, right? Who's watching them? How is it Netflix is making all these little movies, and are they really making money? Or there's a fucking Adam Sandler sequel out, the golf one, the stupid golf movie that I refuse to see, that people love. Happy Gilmore 2. Oh, fuck. I guess these stars are taking less money now? I don't know. It can't be that stars are making shit tons of money to make these little movies. I'm always surprised. I see these little movies, some big time star is in there, and I'm thinking, oh, that's like a marquee star. There aren't marquee stars anymore, apparently. Anyway, they thought they were going to build this whole fucking industry around Howard fucking Stern. And for me, and for a lot of people, I've heard other people say this, it's just like he vanished. I didn't bother to go get. They thought a lot of us were going to follow him. Maybe a lot of people did. I don't know. I didn't look into it. I thought at the time, I was listening every morning at work, and I thought, oh, yeah, maybe I'll go get the Sirius satellite radio. It wasn't such a stupid idea then, 2005. The internet was still not quite what it is now. I think we were still doing like bear share, like sharing, P2P sharing of music and stuff, right? I don't think I even went to Pirate Bay back then. I wasn't even at that level yet, downloading movies illegally. Anyway.
But Sydney Sweeney's backlash still growing from the wrong people after her American Eagle ad dropped on social media and on mainstream media. Multiple celebrities are continuing to come forward with their thoughts about Sydney Sweeney's ad, one of which now involves, like I said before, Howard Stern, just after developments of his show facing a cancellation. Howard recently delivered the following about Sydney Sweeney.
I like that.
So let me talk about Sydney Sweeney. I think that we all know why people hire this woman, and you know what? I don't blame them, and I don't blame blame her. I thought she was hot right up until I learned she was a registered Republican. Because you know how attraction works. That way, when you learn something about somebody or when you learn something of what they did, everything changes.
Well, I mean, if I learned that she pulled a train with an NBA team, that changes things for me. But political affiliation, not really, because I'm not a fucking weirdo.
Almost certainly know that she supports Trump now, which just absolutely disgusts me. I think we can all safely say that right now. And look, about the American Eagle.
How lacking in self-awareness are you, Howard? How utterly okay, you wanted to switch. Yeah, switch. But at least, recall that you used to be the opposite of what you are now. Right? You used to be utter opposite to what you are now. So at least think this, well, if I say this, I'm going to sound like such a hypocritical, unself-aware asshole. Right? I just can't stand that. You're like the girls on the fucking View, dude.
Yeah, we get it.
He probably goes on the View.
You're hot, you're attractive, but I think it's getting to her ego. I think it's also bringing in so many desperate men that have nothing better to do with themselves. And look, Sydney, I'm sure, is just
That was us, your audience back in the day. Desperate men with nothing better to do with themselves. You stupid fuck. You're like Tucker Carlson with Nick Fuentes. You just fucking don't have a clue. And of course he's Jewish, and there was always this horrible anti-Gentile business with him. He claimed to be half Italian. I've heard somewhere else that that's not even true. He's just Jewish, But he thought that gave him some cachet with some, like regular guy street cred, if he was half, half spick. Can I say that? A spick. Because, I don't hate spicks.
Raking it in right now from American Eagle, but she has to know she's raking it in from desperate men that can't think for themselves right. So doesn't that make her a bit of an opportunist? I sure think so.
What the fuck is he talking about? She's a nice-looking actress who did a jeans ad. Dude, Brooke Shields back in the day did the same ad. This whole Sydney Sweeney ad is like a send-up of the old Brooke Shields ads. So was that what Brooke Shields was doing this whole time? What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm honestly disappointed that she's a registered Republican because, with Trump supporters, they are all lunatics, and it's sad to know that she is likely one that falls into that same category of Trump supporters. I think
I wonder how many people he lost. Now, I know at some point in 2015, some point after the famous escalator ride, so he's close to Trump this whole time, right? Some of the most damning quotes attributed to Trump, happened on the Stern show where they're talking, saucy fashion about females, right? And I seem to remember hearing a clip, where he's interviewing Trump after he's announced he's going to run for president in 2016, 2015, I guess. And he's not yelling at him or anything, right? They're still friends. And Howard Stern is saying, you could actually win this. Howard Stern is being uncharacteristically insightful in saying, because nobody was taking Trump seriously at that point. And Howard Stern says, you can actually win this. So around 2015, God, it's 10 years ago already. We're all going to die before you know it. So around 2015, when Trump's running for the first run for president, he's still friends with them, and he's not playing this act where he thinks that every single person who supports Trump is a fucking lunatic, yada, yada, yada. He's the worst person in the world. I can't fucking really articulate why, I imagine, right? Not because of the fealty to Israel, I bet. And I sure would like to see what Trump's been saying, what Stern has been saying about Gaza. I can only imagine. Can only imagine how bad he is on the subject of Gaza. Just like all the other dipshit doctrinaire leftists. It's not all leftists. Not all leftists. But, the bulk of them, certainly the bulk of the anti-Trump movement, hates him for all the wrong reasons. He's a fascist because he's, anti-immigration. Right? It's all the wrong fucking reason. No, he's a disaster because he's a Zionist, right? That's the disaster. He's a disaster because he talks about ending the, forever wars. He talks about ending liberal interventionist wars. He never said on behalf of Israel, but that's what it was. Like maybe Trump is just too stupid to realize it. You know, he's awful because of that, because he's turned he betrayed us on those promises. Anyway.
Had been better off not knowing her side of politics, because now I just find the ad by American Eagle
God, look how
more like an ad for Trump or those that are on the right of politics. So it's
how in the fuck is it even that though?
said in that own way and in that own sense, and very lazy, quite honestly. Look, I don't have a problem with hot women, but I do have a problem when they deliberately leak their political status and really taking advantage of what they do, of course, time and time again. And what do the kids call them?
Is she a Republican? Is that the thing? I didn't even know this. I'm behind. Is Sydney Sweeney a Republican? That would be nice.
Today, simps, I think. Yeah, more than likely these are desperate Trump supporters that are loving Sydney Sweeney right now in this advertisement.
Right, Howard, you fucking moron. You've been in fucking media your whole life, and I have to explain this. This guy with 5 people watching him on has to explain it to you. The ad is for women. It's for us. Guys will talk about it. But even the extent that they get us talking about it is to impress the women, to go out and buy the jeans. A woman sitting next to her boyfriend on the couch, and his boyfriend, she's watching him, sit up a little in his seat as he's watching the Sydney Sweeney ad, or saying, "Oh, look, she looks great," You fucking moron. You don't understand women Yeah, that's the thing, dude. You don't understand women.
But no question about it that American Eagle is, of course, raking it in. And American Eagle is why, I think, of course, why attack those with bad genes? Why are they attacking those with bad genes? I think I have good genes. Can I get...
Yeah, well, they're talking about appearance, You don't have good genes for appearance. You're gawky, You've got good genes for brain. I mean, cannot deny that your intelligence and your cunning and your talent, they're all there. You had good genes for that. But, that's not what it's about. It's about physical beauty.
With American Eagle? Haha. Now, guys, let me just stop there for one moment. I think that Howard Stern is losing his mind after he learned about what Sirius XM is talking about right now. In case you guys missed it, they are in heavy talks to canceling his radio show, all right? His, satellite show on Sirius XM. And that's coming to a close more than likely because, well, he's really not as relevant as he was.
Yeah.
Not even...
I mean, and Sydney Sweeney would have been an interview on this Howard Stern show. You would, right? Absolutely. And maybe she refused to do an interview on the show. Maybe he can't get interviews, right? Maybe he's sitting there now and people aren't returning his calls. And they were lining up to go on the show. Like I said, this remarkable situation, got to hand it to Howard. That, he had big-time stars coming in, female stars come in to submit to this, irreverent, offensive, sort of humiliation ritual almost, right? It's like almost like a roast, right? And they would go there because, oh, look how cool I am. I submit to Howard Stern's ridiculous juvenile questions with a sense of humor. That was the whole idea. And it was working. I mean, it was actually helping people's careers. Now he doesn't have that effect anymore. Now he's an embarrassment, and you don't really want to go on the show. If you're Bruce Springsteen, right? If you're Glenn Fry from the Eagles, maybe, right? If you're some aging boomer, you'll go on Stern's show, right, and think you're cool, and you'll sit. The two of you are talk about Trump like a male version of The View. Well, we'll learn absolutely nothing. Well, anyone making it to the end of this interview is, got just way more stamina than me.
Close to what he was. Like I said, 25, 30 years ago, even more than that at this point. And it really just makes you question to yourself exactly what's going on with all these celebrities, turning the whole Sydney Sweeney advertisement now into a political talking point just because they discovered that she's indeed a registered Republican, which is, yeah, the truth. I mean, that was uncovered. But they're using that as leverage to kind of create this into a political talking point and making it as if American Eagle's ad is a political ad, which is just insane. It's insanity. Moving on. He goes on to allude further. Can I get an ad with American Eagle? But I mean, I just don't see Sydney the same way anymore. I thought she was on our side, and now learning that she is likely siding with Trump and Trump supporters and MAGA and all that nonsense, I just can't even look at the ad anymore. I mean, I had problems with the ad in the beginning, no question about that. I thought it was lazy and just boring. We all knew the meaning of the ad for sure, and there was one thing that I did like about it. That was Sydney. All of course put aside, the ad was just abysmal. But now that she's a registered Republican, this is sounding more like a political ad. It's almost like a gotcha moment, you know? And that's the issue I have with American Eagle right now. Now guys, before I get to the closing part of Howard Stern, one thing about him is that he really does have a very weak argument here. In no way, shape, or form is this a political advertisement.
Holy shit.
In no way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no. It's just, it's this, cancellation culture on steroids. Oh, if we found that you're a registered Republican, we're going to make it difficult for you to work. Right? That's the only thing that can be, like, you're not, I mean, there's all kinds of things. We don't know anything about Sydney Sweeney, really, or anybody else who's a celebrity. We're not even about you, Howard Stern. But we're going to let people work because you got to give people the benefit of the doubt. And what right do we have to say you can't be a Republican? Stern practically was a Republican, really. I mean, he was I used to listen to the show, and it was like he was more Republican than he was liberal Democrat. He was this he occupied this weird space because of his racism and sexism. Of course, he was very liberal, but really he just represents the worst of the boomers in a way, you know what I mean? Super liberal, just doesn't even have the wherewithal to have any sort of moral stance, and God forbid, stand against any sort of moral depravity, right? And then regarding other people and regarding women, I mean, I don't even defend the so-called sexism now. Obviously, I don't give a shit about sexism, misogyny, but what he did was he normalized a porno view of femininity. He normalized pornography. He used to talk about jacking off all the time. And he went a long way, very cliched for a Jewish guy. He went a long way toward normalizing porn. We were going to kid it anyway with the internet. But, when he's coming on and he's talking about how he jacked off the night before to pictures of somebody or whatever, it's just like telling guys, yeah, don't feel bad about it, I mean, honestly, the natural state for a guy masturbating should be, yeah, this is kind of humiliating that I'm resorting to this. Really, that's, and I'm saying we should shame you out of polite society. Masturbation is far too widespread for that. But, it shouldn't be indulged at all. A young man should acknowledge that it is, at best, a humiliating expedient. No shit, right? But not just that. Then Howard Stern also, with his, his bullshit, lesbians, right? Hot lesbians, and this whole thing about, God, I hate it. I'm going to say it, objectifying women sexually. He actually makes a feminist out of me in retrospect when I think about it. Because, though I believe that feminism is out of control and that there's this sexual hysteria behind it. At the same time, we should be far more circumspect about sex, and we shouldn't be having sexual conversations with women. I mean, I think of it, and I think it's actually gone down for the wrong reasons, that women and men are alienated from each other. But I can recall when I was much younger that it was pretty common that you might have frankly sexual conversations in mixed groups. And I still think, I just hate a woman speaking frankly about sex in front of men is like the most distasteful thing. It's just the most cringy thing ever. But anyway, I mean, he did yeoman's work for the devil in destroying, sexual modesty, in destroying any sort of restraint around pornography and masturbation, in destroying any sort of restraint around sexual promiscuity. He just took a fucking axe to that forest, and now he feels bad for all the wrong reasons. It's just like he hates Trump for all the wrong reasons, Now he's a feminist, when he should be, like any fucking sensible person nearing the end of life, he should be becoming more conservative. And he should be, like any sensible person, rethinking his libertinism and coming to understand why people wanted restraint around sexual morality and anything else. But, like I said, the whole time this guy was really about wanting to be a big star. He thought he was going to be a movie star. What a joke. He thought he was going to be the lead in romantic comedies. He ended up making one god-awful movie. So, I mean, we were spared that. We were spared Howard's film career. I don't know. Should we listen to the rest of Mike Zero? Dude's got 535,000 subscribers.
Is this, no less an advertisement for Trump or Trump supporters? Makes no sense at all, right? Very weak argument at that. A very pathetic argument by Howard Stern. And look, you guys may have...
Oh, shut up. You got 500,000 subscribers. I've got 5, and you suck. No, you don't suck, Mike. We're using your material. Thank you. But I'm not going to subscribe. I don't think I want to subscribe. Can I play this? Will I get a strike for playing this? You've all seen this. Let's just play it.
Well, why do you think that is? I mean, why is that? I mean, is it just because people are lazy today, or they're bored? I mean, are we just like bored, spoiled children who've just been lying in the bathtub all day, just playing with their plastic duck, and now they're just thinking, well, what can I do?
Okay, yes, we are bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks? And it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot. And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And When I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "Ah, New York, yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, "Oh, I don't think it's that way at all." He said, "I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made or to even see it as a prison." And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, "This is a pine tree." He put it in my hand and he said, "Escape before it's too late." See, actually for 2 or 3 years now, Chiquita and I have had this very unpleasant feeling that we really should get out. And we really should feel like Jews in Germany in the late 30s. Get out of here. Of course, the problem is where to go, because it seems quite obvious that the whole world is going in the same direction. See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished, and that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, and that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing, and there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet.